He then hit a remote mine? What? Did this guy survive? Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Reacts. Wounded Ukrainian soldier delivered e-bike by drone to escape Russian ambush. Insane. I said it before and I'll say it again. I think a lot of the reason we see so much evolving technology on the battlefield of Ukraine is because it is a blank slate. It is an R&D lab for technology, especially drone technology. So the incremental advancements it would take over time in peacetime are now amplified into leaps and bounds in technology and innovation because of the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. So for sure, we're assisting with parts of this. We're either delivering drones, giving the training, a combination of a lot of things, but this is technology that we're exercising on the battlefield to use in future wars for ourselves. And that's very sad to say, but it comes with the cost of lives. So here we go. Ukrainian soldier was ambushed. A lot of his comrades were killed. He was left abandoned and he had to get back to friendly lines, except he was injured and didn't have the ability to do it. Let's roll the film. That's pretty wild, seeing that drone carry that bike. So it's got two straps on it on both wheels, hauling it and then dropping it. It says the brave troop had been stranded for several days behind enemy lines with numerous attempts made to save him. And this is like the only way out. Drop an e-bike and ride your way out to safety. Wild. So he managed to ride 400 meters, but he then hit a remote mine? What? Okay, I don't know if it was remote. I'm buying more into the fact that it's probably an anti-personnel mine and he ran over it with his bike tire and it blew him up. But man, imagine the odds. Like, you survive days behind enemy lines, you're trying to get out, and then you get an e-bike delivered by a drone, and then you ride 400 meters on a high because you're like, I can't believe I'm getting out of here, and then you hit a landmine. It says remote mine. It says he was thrown into the air. Did this guy survive? I did not know this was part of the story. Oh, he then limped a further 200 meters before thankfully being met by his comrades and taken to safety. Whoa. Okay, so he wasn't that far off, but 400 meters surrounded by enemy personnel, that's a lot. And then he went and walked an additional 200 meters, so he survived that blast. Thank God for that bike, because that's probably what saved his life. And then he was met by his comrades and taken to safety. The other video that I wanted to play for you guys is really the complete opposite of what we're talking about here. You guys have probably already seen this, but initially, this drone was dropping munitions into a trench, which we're fighting trench warfare in Ukraine. It's wild, right? So they dropped munitions, these look like mortar rounds, into their positions, killing them. And one of the injured Russian soldiers is begging for mercy, and they see him on camera and decide to do this instead. It says the K2 battalion, which is part of the Ukrainian Army's 54th Brigade, posted the video, and you see him holding his hands together. He's obviously unarmed, injured, and asking for surrender. And instead of dropping ammunition on top of him, which I figured the Russians would likely do, they instead drop a water bottle. And the water bottle has a note and gives him instructions on what to do. Wild times, man. It says the drone operator decided not to kill the injured Russian soldier, instead dropped water in a note. All these men praying to the same God. And these guys are working for their master, Putin, sacrificing all their lives. I'm going to pause it right here. I think that's morphine. I'm pretty sure that's morphine. It says the enemy injected himself painkillers to get to the right place. Oh, okay, so he had it on his person, maybe in his pocket, or maybe it was dropped, and he decided to inject himself with it so he can get the strength to walk out of the trench and down the trench line to safety. It says the soldier is then led across no man's land to a Ukrainian trench. It's not unclear where or when the video was shot, although it appears to be in late summer in Donbass. I have watched follow-up on this. After he surrendered, he wound up being taken to a camp, and they interviewed him, and he's lucky to have survived, where so many people have not. Now, guys, lastly, I want to talk about this thing that I discovered over the weekend. It's called the Rape of Nanjing. Nanjing used to be the capital of China. In 1937, Imperial Japanese Army infiltrated and raped and murdered hundreds of thousands of people. The estimates range anywhere from 40,000 to 300,000, but the reason I started looking into this is because I didn't realize the brutality and also our perspective of the Japanese today. Have you ever seen the flag of the rising sun, the Japanese flag? It's on cars. There's a whole JDM culture. I grew up in that culture, and that's kind of odd because we blame the Germans for World War II, despite us being at war with the Italians, the Germans, and the Japanese. In fact, most World War II veterans that had any experience in and around the Japanese army often regarded them as being the most brutal of foes. They wouldn't capture anybody because they would torture them and execute them on the spot. Also, your chances of surviving a German POW camp was about 96%. Japanese, about 70%. That's right. 3 out of 10 did not survive a Japanese prisoner of war camp. Not only did they brutalize American service members, but they also brutalized Koreans, Filipinos, the Chinese, and basically anybody they came across. So why did they get a pass? So much so they got a pass that nobody from the Japanese army was charged and convicted of war crimes, despite there being proof and a lot of evidence of them torturing people, hundreds of thousands of people, freezing babies just to see what would happen, freezing limbs and banging them off just to see what happened, brutally torturing and raping women, and nothing happened. I mean, we have a good relationship with the Japanese. The economy is intact. They're powerful economically, and we for sure are partners. How did that happen? And how did they get away with that? Why, when we think about the travesty, the devastation that the world faced, we point at one man in charge of the Germans, but we don't mention the Japanese at all? Crazy. Great book written about it. It's called Unbroken. That guy, Watabe, that was the prison guard that brutally beat that airman and many more in that prisoner of war camp. If you haven't read the book or seen the movie, it's great. He retired as like an insurance agent and died at the age of 85. Yeah, and then Hirohito, the emperor of Japan during World War II, and despite his official position as being kind of a head and not really the tactical decision maker, yeah, he came to Anaheim, California on July 17th, 1955, to Disneyland. Yeah. Reportedly, he was a big fan of Mickey Mouse and even presented with a Mickey Mouse watch during his visit, which he was reportedly buried with after his death in 1989. Yeah. It might have been those nukes. I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Part of the reason culturally they said that they didn't face the same ramifications as the Germans is because our culture couldn't identify with something that was so foreign to us. Did we forget Pearl Harbor and all of the campaigns that we fought in the Pacific? I don't know. I imagine if you were a veteran of World War II or knew somebody who was a veteran of World War II, that wasn't a thing. Band of Brothers was super popular for its position in the European theater. The Pacific version of that, not so popular. I just saw that over the weekend. Thought you guys would be curious about that. I am going to do a segment of content on that, specifically talking about it on my Glover channel. I appreciate you guys. Till next time. Peace.